is the Black Lives Matter movement succeeding in its aim to end racism? And is life now better or worse for black people in Britain?
Let's have a look at some of the results from our Good Morning Britain survey, which has revealed that fewer than half of black people surveyed think the BLM movement has improved the lives of black people in Britain, while 10% say it has made things worse. 46% of black people say the campaign has had no impact on their opportunities in life, while 50% of white people surveyed say the campaign has improved their understanding of the issues affecting the lives of black people in Britain. So, from Birmingham, we are joined this morning by presenter and comedian David Sideman Whiteley, who quit his job at BBC Radio 1 Extra after the use of the N-word in a news broadcast for which the Director General of the BBC subsequently apologised. We're also joined from Manchester by political commentator and writer Dominic Samuels, and from Bedfordshire, we're joined by G. Turara, former Met police officer and diversity trainer. Very good morning to you all. David Sideman Whiteley, how do you... I mean, you have been in the news right at the sort of forefront of the effect of language, particularly racist language, in the last couple of months. How do you feel right now about what progress has been made, considering you left your job as a result of something egregious that happened?
I feel very, very positive, but that's just coming from understanding that transition is always a tumultuous thing. Like, if you're building a house and you're starting with the foundation, that is dirt and that is digging down, it's not building up. And I feel like what's happening right now that would even make people suggest that things are worse or haven't changed is simply because what we're talking about tearing down is a system that has taken over 400 years to build. So it's not going to go down in a year, but I think that we've started to see change in that. A lot of corporations, a lot of organizations, a lot of businesses have been more held accountable than ever before, have pledged to help more than ever before. So I think it's undeniable that change has happened. It's just whether people are feeling that trickle-down effect in their personal lives, which will, of course, take time.
Dominic Samuels, let's come to you. You feel that I mean, quite a big view that you feel that the Black Lives Matter movement has had no positive effect at all. That seems quite an extreme view, really.
Well, I'm going to try and be balanced here. I think on a surface level, it's inspired certain conversations. So, for example, I remember particularly Alexandra Burke did this video where she was detailing her experience with racism in the music industry, which I think was quite powerful. But if we actually look at tangible change that has occurred, what has actually happened? Well, it's inspired the Royal Mail to paint post boxes black. It's inspired Uncle Ben's to get rid of some rice. And it's inspired numerous corporations like Boohoo to virtue signal over racism. Meanwhile, they're exercising modern-day slavery in Leicester. And that's because Black Lives Matter isn't actually about black people. On a surface level, it's purporting to be about black people, but it's really about pushing quite an extreme political message that actually has nothing to do with black people.
Well,
and
numerous people Dominic,
can I just finish this point quickly?
Yeah.
It's just numerous people that have been a part of Black Lives Matter. For example, Iman Ayton, who actually organised Black Lives Matter protests, she's completely disavowed the movement because she said that Black Lives Matter, the organisation, hasn't been on the ground once, and they're pushing extremely political messages like getting rid of the police and abolishing capitalism. And these are things that the average people, and actually a lot of black people, 70% of black people have trust in the local police 16 years and over. And a lot of black people don't really understand this either, and that's why it's created such a divisive political environment.
So what I was just going to interrupt and say, and apologies for interrupting, but Dominic, there is a difference, isn't there, between the movement and I think you're right. A lot of people would have issues with the organised movement Black Lives Matter, but I think there is the message Black Lives Matter with which most people would agree, even without subscribing to some of the more radical elements of the organised movement. If we can talk about, the Black Lives Matter message, which is so important, do you think that has changed things?
This is the problem, though, because people are now saying, well, it's the message, it's not the organisation. Well, it's the organisation that has brought the actual slogan Black Lives Matter into the limelight. If you remember the campaign that was Stand Up Against Racism, that was the campaign about racism in football, nobody had an issue with that at all. You can't separate the slogan and the organisation because they've essentially become one and the same. And what people are doing is they're using the slogan Black Lives Matter because the organisation is so notorious and started in America. Black Lives Matter UK isn't directly affiliated with the organisation in America, but one of the founders that identifies as a trained Marxist came over to the UK to sort out the organisation and actually endorses it. So when people try and make this separation, that's what's a part of the problem.
Dominic, I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, I can support the idea that Black Lives Matter. I don't even know who this organisation are. I don't care to know. I'm never going to support them. But I can support the idea. And just to say on that, I mean, I know this much. They don't want to get rid of the police. That's another sort of... It's defunding the police. And their argument is this funding is given to sections of the police, whether it's to help stop and search, which they think discriminates against minority people. But that's another argument. But the point is that you can believe in the issue, can't you? And the fact that... I mean, if you look at football, for example, there's undeniably, football has an issue with racism. They've tried to get rid of it for decades and they haven't. The idea that players take a knee at the beginning of a game is huge. It's massive for the people who are racist or in the stands or at home watching it to see that. That is just an issue, isn't it? No one cares. No one really cares about the organisation at that point.
Yeah. But that's the issue, though. It's the organisation that started all of this. The taking the knee thing has been heavily politicised and utilised by the organisation. Of course, I believe that Black Lives Matter, but when everyone is jumping on this bandwagon and a lot of people don't really know that much about the organisation, it's not going to lead to actual tangible change. Black people need economic policies in this country, and not once has Black Lives Matter actually proposed anything of any substance that's actually going to change anything for Black people, which is why hardly anyone thinks it has.
Yeah, and David, you'd put your, you'd made an interjection about that point.
Yeah, because I just feel like, no offense to Dominique, but she's being extra woke in a situation that don't need that, because she's saying that, you know, people don't know and they're joining the bandwagon. But the thing is that her saying that you can't divorce the Black Lives Matter, the sentiment from the organization, yes, you can, because messaging matters. It's like the defund the police concept. That was bad messaging, because defund the police, even though we understand what they meant, the immediate message isn't impactful enough because it gives a negative connotation in people's mind. Whereas now, to try to take down the phrase Black Lives Matter just so you can change it to something else when there's so much momentum behind that phrase. Number one, to be clear, in the Black Lives Matter movement in Britain, which I consider not to be any one organization, but multiple different organizations and people with the one mindset that we want Black lives to matter. There have been people that have been pushing for policies to change. There have been people that have been pushing for the education system to change and properly reflect what's happening in Britain today to Black people, so that there's more social awareness, not just from Black people, but across the board about what we're dealing with. To spend time now wasting time in attacking the phrase and attacking the sentiments of some or the political agenda of some is a waste of time in actually getting things done. It's a wasteful conversation, in my opinion.
Let's bring in G Tarawa here. G, I mean, there's perhaps some discussion to be had about, OK, you can have protests, you can have slogans, you can believe in an issue, but how do we eventually see systemic change? How do we see a change in a system? The things that Sideman talks about there, that more equality in education and the workplace for Black people and all people of different minorities. Whose responsibility is that? And will this have that consequence? Is this the start of that, do you think?
For me, it's the start. It's a conversation. I'm a facilitator by trade. And to me, it's about the conversation. And this is an area where I say it's like a hedgehog. Everybody has a point. And it's about finding a way to bring all those points to a place of understanding. And when we work in this space, one of the difficulties is everybody wants to be right. And nobody wants to find that point of understanding or find that point of cooperation. And we are at the very beginning. To ask whether Black Lives Matter has had an impact, I think it's too soon. what I'm seeing is conversations are taking place, like this one on here now. What I'm seeing as personalities are now coming up and using their voices, whether they be celebrities or political pundits or entertainers. You know, the people are now having the space to say, this is how I feel about this issue.
Yeah, and it's important to have those conversations, but I just wonder whether, and they are vital, but there is a danger, isn't there? When everybody posted the black square on Instagram, it has, you know, it's fantastic for raising the issue and having the conversation. If that black square doesn't translate into apprenticeships and job opportunities and, you know, tackling the disproportionate number of black people who are stopped and searched and a black barrister who has to get an apology in a court because she is repeatedly mistaken for a defendant, you know, change has to come from the conversation because the conversation isn't sufficient.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I mean, if I walk into a class, I can't do change in 5 minutes. It's not going to happen. I can't go into a room and say, right, in the next 5 minutes, you're all going to change. It's a process. It takes time. And the difference is everybody has a different expectation of how long it should take. And that creates a problem because...
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Can I just say something? I think we are starting to see that change happen in terms of accountability, and it's because we keep talking. We lack the economic infrastructure, right, to speak on that level, to affect change on that level at this present moment in time. But what we have been doing is using our voices, our amplified voices, where it has been amplified more now than ever. The average black person feels more now like they can share about their circumstances more than ever. And in sharing about that, you embarrass these businesses, you embarrass these corporations, for instance, like the issue that you mentioned of somebody who's a judge or somebody who's in the court system being accused of being somebody else. When we speak openly about these things, now there is an accountability that we're having where we're embarrassing those that do these things against us, whereas we were quiet in the workplace before, huddling up amongst each other saying, yeah, this happened to me, but never feeling like we can have that wider conversation because we felt like white people wouldn't understand us. But right now it's a bonnet if they understand us or not. We're going to say these things and we're going to open up the thing. And I believe that you can't heal what you don't reveal. And I think that from having these open conversations, we're seeing more accountability, whether you want to go to the fact that me leaving the BBC more just over 24 hours later, there was an apology. We are seeing accountability more so now than before.